Welcome to the Titan Wealth podcast. Today I'm joined by Tiff and Dave, and we're going to talk about all things compliance, but please don't switch off, it does get interesting. We're going to cover topics such as why compliance is a culture, not a department, and things to consider when applying compliance across multiple jurisdictions as Titan continues to grow itself internationally. Welcome to the Titan Wealth podcast. Dave, Tiff, thanks for joining me today. Perhaps we could start by you both introducing yourselves for people that don't know you, please.
I'm Tiffany Roberts, or Tiff, and I am the Group Compliance Director.
Yeah, and I'm David McGall. I'm Head of Governance, Risk and Compliance for the international business.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining me. So let's jump straight in then. This is a difficult one for you. People sometimes hear compliance and think maybe business prevention or computer says no. What's your perspective on that, Dave? And what would you say to people that might think that that's the role of a compliance function?
I think that historically that may have been the case. And I think that what we've always tried to do is kind of dispel that myth. And you know, I personally, and I know that the team at Titan have always really tried to promote a, yes, but culture, or we want to be able to assist the business, and facilitate business, but in line with the regulations and the regulatory environment that we operate within.
Okay, great. And Tiff, when people hear your job title, then you've obviously just shared it with us, what do they usually assume you do, and what do you actually do?
I guess what they think I do is police quite a lot and say no. I is probably most people's opinion. But what I actually do is I think a lot of the time I connect people, so introduce, because I have to know a lot about all the whole of the business. So if I don't deal with it, then I can connect the right people. But also, I'll oversee in terms of integration. I'll work on that. So when we're having new firms, I'm one of the people that go into our new firms that we're integrating, mainly because I can answer their questions, introduce them, speak about what I've been through when we've been through integration as well. So just kind of calm the initial fears that some people have as well. Obviously, turning regulation into something practical as well. That's what I try to push across the whole of compliance as well, that, it's all very well having the rule book, but you've actually got to put that into real life. And it depends on the firm that you're applying the rule to, essentially. So, and I think that's quite key.
And how wide is the remit of compliance and risk at a group level?
It expands everything, really. So from initial onboarding, and that would be from a new firm that we're integrating or a new client, so all the way through, so the whole life of the client, and again through the firm of integration, so bringing them into one of our firms that we already have. So, and I think that's one key point that, considering the risks. So that's where one of the points I think that Dave and I always agree with is that if you have to involve compliance and risk early on, so whatever it is, whatever issue you're talking about, I think that's quite key to involve us early on, and that's where because we go through the whole journey with either the individual, the team, or the firm.
Okay, great. Dave, I can see you nodding there. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, and I think it goes back a wee bit to what you asked me earlier, Mike, was that the perception of compliance, and actually. The remit of compliance now is far more collegiate, working with the business, working with the individuals, front office, middle office, back office. And whereas historically it might have just been, they're sat in the corner, there's a crusty old former police officer ticking a box. That's not the case now. And so I think
not always.
Not always, no, I wasn't a police officer. But I think that's one of the key factors. The remit is so broad that my day is often filled with just people coming up to me asking me questions and how can we do this? How do we go about doing this? And I think just going back to Tiff's point was that the sooner that compliance are involved in those conversations and that we promote that type of environment, that it just makes it a much more easy environment for people to work within.
Okay, and just probing on that a bit further then. So what changes when compliance really understands the front office rather than that back office that you mentioned previously. So what are the benefits that delivers to us as a group?
Yeah, well, look, I've found, I think, particularly in the last 10 years, that front office individuals, whilst they deny it, and we all know those types of people that do, there's a much better understanding of what the environment in which we operate within, and the importance of regulation, and not seen as a computer says no function, or that the regulator's there to whack you over the head. It's more, we've got the ability to operate in this sphere, and how do we go about doing that and operating in that sphere really well. And I think that's the bit that I've seen change in the last decade, I guess, is that front office understand the role that compliance play more, and that therefore as a compliance professional or a risk professional, you have to then also, it works both ways, you have to also understand the pressures that the front office are on, and that means what is the strategic outlook for the business. And we are here to make money. We're a business that's out to make money, and we need to help support the business in order to do that and achieve those strategic goals.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Tiff, just expanding a bit further then, obviously one of our clear objectives at Titan is to have what we call a world-class governance, risk and compliance function. When we say world-class, what does that mean to you?
So I think world-class to me is standardisation, but then applying it to the relevant areas. So internationally, obviously, because we're a growing business internationally. So we have policies, we have procedures that are standardised, we have systems, we have governance and risk and compliance systems that are across all of our entities. However, when we have to apply them differently for a different set of regulations, it's a much easier task to do because we have these set policies. For example, we have them at group. So it's easier for us to apply for the different firms rather than having a number of different policies all on the same topic. Which we've then got to tweak. And that makes it hard to oversee, that makes it hard to audit, and it actually makes it more costly for the whole of the business as well.
Okay. Yeah. And is there an element there on world class around, to Dave's point previous, the proactive versus the reactive element as well?
Absolutely.
Is that something you think is important?
It's something that I really push. I think that's where I've always, I think people that, my main base is London, and generally most people will always say, Tiff, have you got time for a chat? And it won't be that they won't have a fully formed issue, they won't know all of the details, but I'd much rather them come and knock on my door and say, there's just something that we're planning or we're thinking about, or there might be an issue here, can I talk to you about it? And then, we can actually start digging in and being involved with the issue, or actually, if we're looking at something, a new part of the business, or a new regulation that's coming into play, something that we've got to actually get involved in. That's where I think we really want to push, because we need to be involved. I think you'll hear this topic quite a lot, that we keep on pushing that the earlier compliance are involved, the greater we can actually help the business, quite honestly. And that's how we can actually make this gold standard, governance, risk and compliance.
Yeah, great. Okay. And when we say world-class, Dave, does that mean worldwide, or is that something different?
It's a good question. And I think, as we evolve as a business, the global footprint is increasing at a fair old lick, I would suggest. And I think that does drive, this world-class ethos, I guess, and it comes back to culture, I think. And as Tiff alluded to, the standardization and the approach of, look, we operate in various different regulatory spheres and different regulatory jurisdictions.
Yeah.
All of them have their own subtleties, quirks, and different aspects that we have to be mindful of. But if we can, wherever possible, adopt the higher standard, providing that it doesn't impact, the business objectives of that jurisdiction. So we don't want to stifle business, but what we certainly do want to do is provide a standard that the senior management can actually buy into and understand, and that they know the environment in which they're operating within.
Yeah.
Which then sings to the the business development plans and the strategic plans for the wider group. Then that also helps staff members as we all operate together across the globe, because we know the standards that are expected of individuals, and then that promotes the culture. So yes, the ambition is always there to be world class and world leading in terms of all of our governance, risk and compliance functions, but it really does come down to how do we go about doing that. Is it still appropriate for the jurisdiction in which we are operating within, and making sure that where possible we've laid a blanket of sort of good governance, good compliance over all of those areas.
Okay, yeah, that was something I was actually keen to jump into a bit more on, the fact that we are an international business, ever increasing our footprint. How do you approach different regulators with different expectations? That's obviously a daily challenge, but will become more of a challenge and more of an opportunity for our business. So how do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So I think both of us we've visited various regulators over the years. We've had significant interaction with our regulators, so across not only the Channel Islands but Isle of Man, the UK. Obviously, Tiff is the leading expert in that field, but also down into the UAE, into Dubai, and further afield, Canada, for example. I think that it's safe to say that all regulators will want their voice heard or to be considered at the forefront, and I think that's understandable. They've got a job to do, but I think it's always comes down to transparency and what is it that we're trying to achieve, and what as a business, what onus do we put on our regulatory obligations and our compliance functions. And I think by and large, my experience has been nothing but positive, because providing that you do have that transparency, that you do bring your senior management team and your staff along that journey, and that you can demonstrate, through positive interactions with your regulator. I always use the word, it's a kite mark for all of our stakeholders, for our clients to feel confident that the senior management team take regulation seriously, and that therefore, as custodians of their valuable assets, that we actually, we take that seriously, and that there's a good degree of governance that oversees how we monitor and how we look after our clients' assets. And I think that is fundamental.
Okay. What's your view, Tiff?
No, I completely agree. I really do. But I also think that, with our regulators, obviously, if I say like the FCA is the gold standard, and that's where we're trying to bring everyone up to. We don't want to stifle business, but also I think if we can show the regulators internationally that we are always putting our clients first, and we are using any decisions that we make them, our client is always at the heart of it. Then I think that's, that we document it, we've tested it, it's not a knee-jerk reaction that we're doing, then I think that we can always bring, as you say, bring the regulator along. It sounds corny, but bring them along with the journey, quite honestly, and show them what we've done. Then, from my experience, we if they are fully up to speed and they can understand it and they can see the process we followed, they've always been fully supportive.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Really sorry to interrupt the podcast, but I just wanted to say that if you're interested in a career at Titan Wealth, why not head to our website and have a look at the career opportunities that we have available, or there'll be a link in the show notes below. Now back to the podcast.
And slightly bigger question, how would you define success then, Tiff, for a regulatory and compliance function? What's your kind of, how when you go to bed at night and think, is it a good day or a bad day? What's your assessment criteria? How are you assessing that?
I think how I assess it is, I think particularly with, what I really do find a success is that if people come to me with problems, I think where we have issues, if they're not telling me problems, then that's a conduct issue, quite honestly. That's a culture problem that we've got. And so, anyone knocking on the door just saying, Tiff, I need to talk to you about this, we've had this error. Errors happen, quite honestly, and they do. There's nothing we can do about that. But what we can learn from it. We can mitigate it so it doesn't happen again in the future. You know, no one's going to have their head chopped off. We're not about blaming people, because I'd be far more worried if they didn't come to me with issues, quite honestly. Also, it would probably do me out of a job. So, you know, we've got to find these reasons to mitigate against issues that are raised. If they're hiding them and they're, you know, we won't tell compliance, we won't tell risk, we won't involve them, that's when we've really got a problem. So, you know, when I'm pulled into different questions, and most of my day isn't truly compliance, you know, going through the rule book, looking at Cobb's Rule 4.2, it's a much wider than that, quite honestly. You know, it's higher level, and it's thinking out, you know, working through problems, discussing with senior management. You know, Andrew and James, they'll come to me, they'll give me a topic, quite honestly, and I'll have to go away and think about it, and, you know, do my research, think about what the issues are, who we need to involve in the business. So I've probably gone around a little bit around the garden in that, explaining what I find successful, but it's being involved, quite honestly. You know, if I'm not having people come to me all the time saying, Tiff, have you got 5 minutes? I generally don't have 5 minutes, but I will always make 5 minutes for people to come and talk to me, because if they're not talking to me, then that's when the real problems are.
Yeah, okay. Is that the same for you, Dave?
Yeah, it really is. And I think, you know, a good day is where, you know, you've had, and I think this is, again, we come back to culture. It's you know, people use it as a buzzword, but for me, a really positive compliance culture is exactly as Tiff suggested, is that people aren't afraid to come and ask you anything. And it quite often, as you rightly say, it's not about, you know, getting into the minutiae of the regulation. It's more the, you know, the principle based piece, and how do we do this? Should we be doing this? And the fact that, you know, as Jay, you know, you're quite right as well, Tiff. I mean, we're lucky to work in a company that really does promote a positive compliance culture, because we are involved in a lot of the conversations at very early stages, and people will want to get our opinion on things, which is great. Because you know, 15, 20 years ago, I just don't think that was the case, and I think it very much is now. So there's value to be added with involving compliance and risk in early stages. But a good day for me is, you know, when you've got particularly somebody from the front office comes down, wants to have a chat, and they're trying to figure something out, and we, you know, sit down, we chat it through together, and we actually figure out the right way forward. Be that with the fact of they're looking to onboard a new client, but it's in a jurisdiction they're not sure of. We would sit down and we'd go through that, and we'd find a way through it. And more often than not, when there are question marks about, well, you know, we've had this inquiry, but I'm not quite sure about it for the following reasons. You kind of go, well, you're on the money there, right. And that's why. So that's a really good day for me, because I feel like between front office, middle office, and compliance, we're growing together, and we're on the same page. Yeah. So the strategic outlook is being aligned, and I think that's a really good day for me.
Very good. So we talked about the end of the day. What about the start of the day? So what fires you up? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it about your job that you love the most? But maybe come to you first, Tiff, on that.
I'm very lucky. I love it. I love that no 2 days are the same. You know, that everything changes. You know, you'll have your list, and this does sound corny. You have your list of things you're going to crack on with, you're going to clear, and then something happens, or even just, we had a meeting and something's been raised, and well, I need to look into that because that's an emergency. So that's gone to the top of the list. Or, you know, even like dealing with my team, it's a much bigger remit now. You know, I'm very lucky that, you know, I get to visit the different offices. I get to speak to people. No 2 hours are the same. So it's, and it isn't purely, you know, I've been in compliance for quite a while, and that's what I really enjoy about Titan, that you don't do the same job every day, quite honestly. It's, you know, you change, and also you learn so much. You know, I think from when I first joined to where I am now, I remember when I was, you know, sitting down with Damien, and initial conversations I'd have with him, and there are nervous points in where you think, oh my God, I've never done that before. That's completely new for me.
Yeah, so it stretches you.
And it really does stretch you. But now I've done it and I'm quite used to that now. That's just something that I've added to another string to my bow, quite honestly. So it's that's what that I love it, that the change and the fast tempo as well. But also, sorry, just as another thing, that I've also worked in firms before that it takes so long to implement a change that there's, it has to go up to committee, up to the board, and then a decision's made or a question's made. That gets fed back down, and you feel as though nothing actually happens. And it's really frustrating when, particularly, my team will come to me or different people, and we need the change to happen because of something, and it needs to happen quite rapidly. We can make that happen if there's a reason for it, and it does. We don't knee-jerk at all. There's thought in it, but if change needs to happen, it's not like moving an oil tanker.
Yeah, great. Dave?
Yeah, it's the teamwork, I think.
Okay.
And that's not just within our own teams, and it's been brilliant. So since joining Titan 12 months ago, when we were acquired, we've just had access to so many other different environments, jurisdictions, outlooks, different people, and there is a really positive team feeling about this. There is a definitive direction of travel, and then being able to bring our own teams along on that along that, using the tagline journey again, but it really is it really is, and that's what gets me up in the morning, and seeing the team develop, having new opportunities. 2 hours are the same, 100%.
Yeah, I love that. People say no 2 days the same. 2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah, and you sit down with your list, and that goes out the window within about 15 minutes. But there's a beauty of that. It's because it's mentally stimulating. But I really do like seeing members of the team succeed, and have been empowered to figure things out themselves, watching their development. That's what gives me a real buzz, and that's the same for like I say, it's not just within our own compliance and risk teams. It's across the whole business, and seeing other people develop and seeing people grow and being able to have the opportunity to grow within the Titan Group. I think that's really, really special.
Great, thank you. So just moving things on a bit then. We know, obviously, Titan, that one of the massive benefits of being within Titan is it's dynamic, it's fast-paced, it's energetic, it's entrepreneurial. How do you stop compliance from suffocating that growth? We talked before about the balance needed, but just talk to me a bit more. Maybe Tiff, start with you. Is there a tension between ambition and regulation, and how does that usually show up, and how do you manage that?
I think there can be, there can be a tension, and also it can be a little bit of a fear factor as well. Okay. I think, which and it takes a while to get used to that for some people. If they're not comfortable with that, but again, I'm harping on this again, but it is early involvement with compliance. I'd say it's a real key point. We don't have to be involved throughout every single meeting or every single point, but if you involve compliance early, they can step in and go, all right, have you thought about X, Y, Z, or let's work on this together, or they may say, you have these couple of meetings, or get to this point and then we'll get involved again. It's not a point about of us policing and watching over people's shoulders. It's just it's much better for us to kind of go, oh, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that?
Okay.
At that point, rather than at the point of sign off, when you're coming to compliance, go, oh, someone's got to look at it. And then you've got to be the bad guy and go, well, you ever thought about this? And, hang on a minute. I know everyone's ready to go live, but Tiff's ringing the bell and everyone hates Tiff. So that's where it's always better to start to involve compliance earlier. And I think there is a problem, or not a problem, but I think that's where the two rub against each other, that, in terms of that things want to move quickly, but then you do have the compliance where you've got to prove it. It's got to be documented. It's got to be written down. We've got to perhaps bring the regulator along with the journey a little bit.
Okay.
Involve them. And so there are areas, if we're using new tech, sometimes that could be grey areas where there could be conflicts. It's all of those sort of areas where, they do have to be handled. It's definitely, rarely do I say no. And if I am saying no, then
There's a good reason.
it'll be a serious reason.
Yeah.
So, but it'll be, right, we can do that, but hang on a minute, let's work on this, let's do this, and, and we'll sit down and work with you on that.
Yeah, okay.
But I think that's where, the issues can arise. But compliance, the door's always open.
Yeah. Dave, you were going to say something?
And I think that there's, you can look at it the other way as well, in as much as that, it's our obligation to be able to educate the rest of the business as well, in terms of the importance of that. And what I mean by that is, if we're designing a framework in which to operate within the regulatory sphere, wherever it might be, and you have to kind of, it's not often you build anything in finance, but in our world we build these frameworks with, that sets out from a strategic business plan down to, the key artifacts and documents that we use to monitor the business and to support the business, and then obviously the policy network as well. So building all that out takes time, and quite often it's a struggle sometimes to be able to demonstrate the value add that can have to the business. But of course, then when there's an incident or somebody makes a mistake, then you can see how that framework reacts, and you can see actually how it actually protects the business. And I think that's incumbent on us to be able to show the wider business what that means and why we're doing that. It's not a case of we're stifling or putting a straitjacket around the business. It's quite the opposite. It's kind of saying, well, the business wants to travel in this direction. How do we get there? What systems and framework and controls can we put into place that supports that, not stifles it? And I think it's as much incumbent on us to be able to show that to the wider business and to the senior management and to everybody else that we're building this pathway to support you and ultimately support and protect our clients. And that's fundamentally why we're here.
Yeah, great. Tiff, I know you mentioned before about this involving you early, and that you always prefer that rather than ringing the bell at the 11th hour. Yeah. Also, I know from working with you and the team, things are really black and white. So, sometimes people think it's a straight yes, no. Most of the time it isn't.
No.
So it's this flexibility within a framework, and I know that's something you're really passionate about.
I really am. Yeah, it's something that I think throughout all of, my bosses previously, historically, my great bosses have always trained in me, we rarely say no. It's always, right, you might not be able to go from A to B, but we can go from A to F back to B. But but that's again the point of working with us on an early point, quite honestly, rather than ploughing ahead thinking you've got everything right, and then one of my guys somehow hear something, or they're in the kitchen and no one's heard anything, and then they have to get involved, and then compliance come across as the bad guy, which they're absolutely not. They're there to help you and keep you safe. Essentially, they're looking after the client and we're looking after the business.
Yeah.
So, but that it's not. It's always. There's always a grey area. It's not black and white.
Yeah.
And, I think people do think that, you adhere to the rule book, but the rule book there's a lot of nuances in the rule book, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So, and it is down to interpretation. And again, it's applicable to different firms in different ways.
Yeah.
And that's where, you have compliance, you have the compliance team work with you because they know what they're doing and they're there to look after you, quite honestly. Because if you could tick that box and say, I've involved compliance, we're good there, then it's joint accountability. You've done your bit, we've done our bit, and everyone's a winner.
Yeah. I'm really interested within that, though. How do you make judgment calls then along the way without slowing things down? Because obviously if it is flexibility within a framework, there is some subjectivity there, isn't there?
There is.
How do you approach that?
And again, I think it takes quite some time, to be honest with you. And again, I'm bored of hearing myself say this, but it is the early start. It's being involved early because then actually the compliance teams working on the project or the issue or the question, then they fully understand. So they've actually got a bit of time. There might be a point where they have to go away and have a think about things, and they'll come up with solutions, but also it's a case of working with the front office on a solution rather than mandating. That's something that none of the team do. It's not it's this way, it has to be done this way, and you've got hoops to jump through, because that's just not going to actually that's not going to, our fast-paced business just won't work that way, quite honestly.
Okay.
So if you involve compliance and, they'll work with you, then we'll find solutions together, because again, it is listening to the front office. They'll feedback, they'll provide information, and compliance work with you. So it's a case of just working together.
Yeah, great. Dave, you mentioned culture earlier. I was keen to dive into that. Obviously, a large part of the reason we're doing these podcasts is to help connect the group up and start to talk about, One Titan and showcase some of the different areas across the business. But I know integrity is really important to both of you as part of, our cultural framework. What does that actually look like day to day for you, integrity? How would that show up? What would it mean in practice? What does it mean in practice?
I think we've alluded to a few things whereby I generally feel that we have a very compliant culture in across the group. I really do feel that, and I think when we talk about integrity, it's integrity from top down. So making sure that the board of directors and the senior management team are being seen to, carry out business activities in a way that where we talked about the shades of grey within the regulatory environment. There are always shades of grey, but being able to take risk-based approach that align to the ethos and the integrity piece is really important, and people see that from a top down approach. Then individuals and staff members on a day-to-day basis making considered decisions that put the client first fundamentally, and then the business second. And quite often then there might be occasions where the business has to come first and then actually client demands come second. But as long as we're thinking that what are we here for? We're here for the client, and actually making informed decisions, risk-based decisions, that we can all put our hands on our heart and say that was the right decision to be made at that time, and it was made for the right reasons. I think that's fundamentally what it comes back to. A good compliance culture, a good environment where people do feel that there's trust within the compliance team and within the senior management team, and that they feel that those individuals are making the right decisions for the right reasons.
Okay. And Tiff, on that theme, obviously within that piece around integrity, there's personal judgment, there's personal accountability. So rather than thinking the compliance department exists and therefore they're taking care of all that, I can do my job, what would you say to that in terms of people's personal kind of responsibility?
And that's something we were talking about earlier. I think it's joint accountability.
Yeah.
Times have moved on. It's no longer, if compliance have seen it and tick the box, then it's not my problem. Tiff's going to prison. It's not that at all. It's you're being the grown up as well. You have your role, you have your job, but you've involved compliance, and we've reached a decision together. That individuals should feel confident that issues like these are raised, and when problems do arise, because they do, then they are actually, they're aired, they're not brushed under the carpet. We have, senior management down, discuss these issues, and we fix them. They're not just ignored, because culture is important to us.
Yeah, and just to support that, within our various committee structures and our governance structures, I think it's really important. We often invite other members of staff to attend those, not necessarily to participate unless required to do so, but to kind of observe and see and understand better. Because I think that's a really good way of understanding what the business has to go through on a day-to-day basis, and understand the risks that we face as a business. And that's been really, really positive. People from the outside of the governance, risk and compliance world that come to those types of forums, and they can contribute. But we've used that as a tool to give people a better understanding of what the various different risks that we face as a business, and how we then make an informed decision on how we approach them, and the processes we go through. So that comes back to transparency. It comes back to trust.
Yeah.
I think we have to have trust trust that the senior management team are doing the right things by the business, trust that the compliance function will be here and it's an open door, it's an open door policy. We want people to come and speak to us, and then trust from the client's perspective that we're doing the right thing by them and that we're looking after their assets appropriately.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think for me that personal accountability and thinking that compliance is part of our culture, right? It's not a department. It is something that we all have to be thinking about and conscious of, and using, having integrity is a useful guide for that, right? Where there aren't formal rules in place, acting with integrity is a useful benchmark and a useful barometer to say, actually, is it the right thing to do or not? Does it feel the right thing to do for clients or for that part of the business?
I think that's why I'm really keen to, for all of the compliance team to be present. So, on the office floor, they're always around, because I think the more people know me, the more, comfortable they are to come and talk to me or talk to the team, then if I'm present, then nothing's hidden, quite honestly. And as you say, exactly that, it is an open door and compliance are involved throughout the whole business.
I do have to say, you've got to be careful. Your door will be inundated after this podcast.
It's a saloon door.
Careful what you wish for.
No, I just support that, and everybody knows that I really promote getting up off your seat, going and speak to people. But if you're going to send a big long email that it's going to take people 2 days to read, as opposed to doing that, pick up the phone, go and speak to somebody, be present. Well, that's what we want. Hopefully, the compliance team will and the governance team will be present around all of our offices and jurisdictions. But I think that's so important for building the trust and building the relationships, because our frontline defence is actually our front office. Yeah. It's the people that interact with the clients on a day-to-day basis. They are compliance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're the people that are responsible. They're the people that are so close to the action, that they're on the coalface, that they're doing the right thing by the business and working hard to grow the business. But equally, they're the people that have got access to the most risk, because they're dealing with the clients on a day-to-day basis. And so that for me is fundamental when we talk about promoting a good compliance culture, is that people understand the regulations, they understand the environment in which they operate within, but they also kind of say, they might make form a question in their head saying, didn't really like what that client has just said to me. I'm going to go and speak to Tiff, or I'm going to go and speak to Dave, or I'll speak to one of the members of the team, and just chat it through, and allay those fears or allay those suspicions, or it gives them an opportunity to kind of actually raise a really good catch and an issue that might need to be dealt with.
Yeah, great. And you obviously talked a bit both on this podcast, both of you, about the importance of involving compliance early, and you've got people hanging on your every word on this podcast, desperate to understand what you're going to say next. So, what if people are going to come to you early? How would you want them to engage? What's the best way to engage? If they were going to bring you a problem or a question, is there a kind of pro forma or thing they should be thinking about around how best to approach and what information to bring, or is it literally just if something's on your mind, have a chat?
Take us out for dinner. I think
Lovely.
Steak, that would be
nice.
Good.
I think the more people worry about, what information I'm going to give you, have I got all the facts, have I got all the details, then they're gonna miss the boat, quite honestly. Right. I'd much rather them come to me and go, Tiff, I don't know all the details. If there's a problem, I don't know all the details. This is what I know so far. I can ask my questions. You need to go and find out who, what, why, where, when, how, and then come back and we'll do some more. We'll get involved. But also, we're thinking of this new product. We've got this new client range where we're thinking of a new jurisdiction. All these different things, rather than sat there kind of navel gazing, essentially thinking too much about the issue. Just come and have a chat. That's all you need to do, And if you can generally always get hold of one of us, quite honestly. If I'm not at my desk, it'll be because I'm in a meeting. So you can drop me a Teams, you can phone me, and the same with the team. Someone's always around if you want to go and speak to them face to face. Yeah, I absolutely wouldn't, please don't think about filling out a form or something like that, just because I think whilst you're worrying about that, what you need to put in and what you haven't, then, you're thinking too much about it. I'd just rather, because it's not going to be the only conversation we have probably about the issue. Yeah. So let's just kick off.
Yeah, great. You agree?
Yeah, come and have a chat.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone. There's always somebody going to be there to answer. But that is, you're 100% right. If a problem shared is a problem halved, and it just, like I say, it just goes a long way to allay fears, or actually just to be able to, offload on where they're currently feeling and how they're feeling about things, and likewise, there's always going to be frustrations because we are a fast-moving business. We're an entrepreneurial business. We want to keep business flowing, and sometimes the machine doesn't move as quickly as people would like.
Sure.
So that's just the world that we live in. But I think by and large, because we do understand our own strategy and where we're going and the types of business that we want to be doing in all the various spheres and the service lines that Titan offer, I think that we can move quite quickly. And because you do end up speaking with decision makers very, very quickly, they can make those informed decisions. But frustrations will always be there.
Okay.
But if they, don't hide in or drown in a 2-page email, trying to cover off as much as you can, pick up the phone, chat it through with the team, chat it through with Tiff. Come and speak to us, because we're probably reviewing a policy that we want to be saved from anyway, or knee deep in a business risk assessment of some kind. So come and have a chat with us and save our life. Yeah,
great. And just for the benefits of the people watching, how does that openness help with our relationship with the regulator as well? Just bring that to life, because that's obviously really important, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I think it really helps because, we whilst the regulator is slightly different internationally versus onshore, that, we're not as lucky. We don't have, a direct contact, but we are growing obviously as a firm, and we are seeing the same people at the FCA through our different firms that we have. So, and they're connecting the dots. They're working out that, that we are this bigger entity, quite honestly. And so our communication, so when they're asking questions, even they're understanding that, you don't do that in that firm, but you do it in this firm. And then we can talk about things that are coming down the road, and also what we've applied here, we've applied in a different firm as well, and it just shows that we've got greater oversight, that we've got this group, we have governance, risk and compliance at group. So again, as I've said before, we have these policies, we have these systems at group. So we have uniformity, which gives the regulator comfort, because they're thinking, right, so you've got, policies in place, you've got committees in place, you've got, that there's good, strong governance. It just works better, because the more we know, the more we can actually give to the regulator.
Yeah.
And they feel that, they just take comfort from that, and they've got confidence in us, which ultimately means that, we don't have the continual questions from them. We have the check-ins, but you don't have the 4 o'clock email from the FCA. I've been there on a Friday afternoon, thinking,
Christmas Eve.
Christ. I've been there as well. I had that, and you think, oh God, right, everything's, all hands to the pump. That's Christmas ruined.
Yeah.
So, it helps us if the business help us, quite honestly.
Yeah, great. Okay, we're going to close now. As I said earlier, we're doing a series of these podcasts to obviously share across the group all of the great work that's happening and connect the business up, all very much around the idea of One Titan. I'm just really interested from both of you what One Titan means to you. So maybe, Dave, I'll start with you. What is it? What does One Titan mean? Maybe in terms of day-to-day behaviours rather than a slogan. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, and I think it's going back to that trust piece. It's going back to the integrity piece. One Titan is that it doesn't really matter whether you're in the Guernsey office, the Jersey office, the London office, UAE, Kettering, or elsewhere within the group, north of the border in Scotland, or wherever you might be, is that there's an expectation of how we behave. There's an expectation on what we're trying to achieve for our clients, and there's an expectation on how we go around doing and operating our business. And I think that, for me, is what One Titan's all about. We've got a strong brand. I think we're all getting behind that. I think that's a really important thing to give us the identity, and being lucky as Tiff is as well, that getting to travel to the other offices and being able to champion that culture piece under the One Titan brand, I think that's what it means to me, is that it's promoting good behaviours, doing the right thing by our clients, and having a bit of fun along the way, actually making it enjoyable.
Great. Tiff, One Titan, what does it mean to you?
I do agree with Dave, to be honest with you. I think it's, we've got this collection of firms, but we are one firm. And that's where I think we really need to push in 2026 that, it's something that I'm really feeling now. We're actually, integrating the firms. We have group conduct, we have group compliance, so we are all singing from the same hymn sheet, essentially. It's how we view the business. And as you've said, it's, we're doing it, we're thinking of our clients, we're putting them first, we're doing it in a compliant fashion. And as you say as well, we do have a good time doing it as well. It's not drudge. We've both said that we enjoy our jobs, and that's what I'd say is One Titan to me.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Well, that draws us to a close. I look forward to the ticketing system that's going to be needed to manage the inbound demand for both your diaries. But thanks for taking the time to join us today, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you
very much. Cheers.